Things are about ready to get crazy. Hey, everybody, you're watching Bull Boom Bear Bust. My name is JJ, back with another dose of economic reality, folks. Just in here, this is out of the G7 summit. What is the G7? That is the 7 countries, and let me just read it right out of some notes I have here. A group of 7 countries that have been coordinated together for global policy for 50 years. And it's an informal grouping of advanced countries that meets annually to coordinate on global economic policy and address other transnational issues. All right, so the G7, including the U.S. here, we are discussing now sanctions against China. I know this sounds crazy, right? Because you saw what happened with the sanctions against Russia. Russia went out and collaborated with China and all these other nations now doing the BRICS nations because they see the abuse put forward by the U.S. and how we've abused our world reserve currency status. Let's go over to the Financial Times. Sorry, let me adjust my mic a little bit here. Hear me better? G7 threatens China with further sanctions over Russia war support. So now any country that's working with Russia, trading with Russia, any BRICS alliance that looks like is going to be targeted by the U.S. This is crazy, folks. This is never, ever going to work because most of the world right now is on the BRICS, amongst the BRICS population, right? So if you look at the world's population, take all the countries that are now part of the BRICS nations, we're talking about half of the world's population, right? The U.S. threats are no longer going to work. In fact, it's the U.S. threats that really motivated a lot of these countries to go away from the dollar. There you have the BRICS alliance, right? So, folks, this is crazy when you start talking about sanctions on China. And to make things worse, we have, well, maybe better, depending on your view, we have the talk now of the former President Trump talking about getting rid of income tax and replacing it with tariffs. This means tariffs on China, right? So is it going to be sanctions on China now, tariffs on China in the future, in the near future, probably, or likely, maybe, maybe not. But this is what is being discussed, and I'm not making this up. Let me play you a clip here.
With the Biden administration pushing back against President Trump's plan to replace income taxes with tariffs. Now, speaking on ABC's This Week, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warning that the tariffs could make life unaffordable. For more, we want to bring in our very own Rick Newman. And Rick, to no surprise, Treasury Secretary Janet...
Of course, Yellen is pushing back against this. Will this work? Will higher tariffs make up for the shortfall or shortcoming when it comes to tax collection if we don't have an income tax? And we're already running deficits. So if deficits and debts don't matter, then do we actually need income taxes to make up any difference? If they can just print the money in unlimited quantities, people are asking, why then would we need income tax? So very interesting, the type of topics that are coming out. I don't think that'll ever happen. I don't think they'll ever get rid of the income tax. I think it's a talking point to try to get the poll numbers up. Because remember, when you have two sides that are basically different sides of the same coin, they need to say things to separate themselves from the other side. Otherwise, there would be no divide, right? There would be no this side versus that side. So, of course, you have this side that's going to say stuff. This side is going to say stuff. They always have to have these topics that are divisive. We see it with lots of different things in the current political spectrum, right? Divisive topics, keeping people separated so you have one side versus the other. So you have the illusion that there's the solution on one side, and then other people are brainwashed to think the solution's on the other side, right? So it's always going to be left versus right. So I think this is just probably what the former president is doing to maybe separate himself or make himself seem different than what's being done on the other side. And there's other issues too, like that. You have the border, a few other things, they're divisive topics. But at the end of the day, I don't think anything this extreme is ever going to be implemented. But again, it's never been done before. Would it work? Nobody knows. Please let me know what you think down in comments. I think the inflation caused by the additional tariffs is going to backfire and make things even more expensive. So even if you're saving a little bit of money over here by not having to take a part out of your paycheck, you're going to end up paying more over here, right? That's what I think could happen. I tend to be maybe not the most optimistic person, because just look at history and see what's happened, right? Everything's gotten worse. People back in the 70s and the 80s said, oh, things are going to get better. Technology. Remember when electric cars came out? People said, wow, gas prices are going to crash because there's going to be so little demand for gas now, that the companies will be forced to lower their price, gas companies. Just the opposite happened. We have electric cars. You would think it would be a lot less demand for gas, but no, gas prices still went up, right? And we see this in other things as well. Look at the all the safety features built in the cars now. Remember when they first started coming out with backup cameras and different safety devices, lane change notifications, brake detection? People said those things were going to decrease the amount of claims that happen, right? And they said because of that, because claims would go down because all these safety features are making people drive more safely, they said, well, the cost of car repairs is going to go down too, or the cost of body shops and labor for fixing cars, fixing damage. Just the opposite happened. It went up. So now we have all these safety features that when there is an accident, it costs so much more to replace the parts because so many different parts of the car have cameras, sensors, all these electronic devices that are costing much, much more. So a lot of things that are done to help, it ends up backfiring, right? I think this could be true with the whole tax thing. People are going to be cheering if they don't have to pay tax. But if you have a tariff on China, a big enough one to make up for the shortcoming from the taxes, you could be paying a lot more. Maybe not. But the bottom line is the solution actually would be to let the cost of living come down. If you let the cost of living come down, you don't need to import things. You can manufacture things here in the US. The reason we don't have much manufacturing is because companies don't want to be here, right? Companies want to open up and operate in countries that have a lower overhead, lower wages, right? So if you just let the cost of living come down, then companies would come back to the US and you wouldn't even have to think about putting tariffs on other countries because we can just make things here. That's the actual solution. Will they ever implement that? I really, really doubt it. When the cost of living is cheap, the problem fixes itself because then you don't have to pay people as much, right? Again, another case of where trying to help over here ends up making it worse. All they have to do is let the cost of living crash. How can they do that? Several different ways. One is you can stop creating endless amounts of money, stop allowing the banks to loan out money they don't have. Banks loan out money now, even if they don't have it in their vaults. It's just electronic digits on a screen at this point, right? 90% of money out there right now is just digital digits on a screen. It's not even physical paper money. And then if you want to talk about backing the currency by gold and silver, then that would actually make prices crash um, very quickly, and the cost of living will come down because you're limiting the money supply based on an actual commodity, based on a physical item. Right? That's what would fix the problem. Will that be done? I'm hoping someday. Maybe I'm optimistic on that front. Some people say I'm bearish or I'm not optimistic. I am optimistic that at some point this whole thing is going to get resolved. But first, it's going to have to get so bad that people are going to demand a different system, and they're going to demand. I think once they learn what's going on, they're going to demand a metals-backed currency at some point. So that's why I say often here, I say keep stacking, because at some point I think gold, silver is going to be reintroduced as a payment system. I think it's going to be done on the blockchain system. So you're going to have a crypto type of thing, but it's going to be limited to the amount of gold and silver these countries have. And I think that's ultimately where the BRICS nations might go. Some people may say this is crazy. They say don't trust China, don't trust these BRICS nations. They're all bad. They're all, wicked or whatever. So that's just my view. I tend to be optimistic on the long term. In the near term, over the next few years, I think it's going to get very, very dangerous, very, very difficult, right? Because inflation, they're not going to allow the cost of living to come down. We're propping up the banks. We're got the government printing money out of thin air, buying up most of the mortgages now. Zero down mortgages are back. We have foreclosure prevention programs back in. We stopped foreclosing on the veterans, which I think is a good thing. But the fact that that program is even in place tells you the severe stress that's happening right now amongst a lot of homeowners, right? So what do you think about this? What do you think about getting rid of the income tax, replacing it with tariffs? What do you think about the G7 nations coming out and saying we might sanction China? Looks like things are about ready to get even crazier, folks. We'll see what happens here, but we'll see how this all plays out. But let me know what you think about all this. How are you preparing? And we'll come back with more news ASAP. Please make sure you are still subscribed and come back to this channel for more reports. Thanks for being here, everybody. Peace. Bye.